Today I am going to be showing you how to make a one-point perspective aquarium drawing. Perspective is how we view or see something. Most of the time in a perspective drawing, that is achieved by making things closer to the viewer bigger and things farther away smaller. Now, something that's really important in a perspective drawing is something that's called the vanishing point. This is the area or the spot in a work of art where things have gradually or slowly gotten so far away that they seem to vanish. That's this point right here where we can see things get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they seem to disappear right about there. I'm going to need a pencil to start with. You're going to need a ruler. Rulers are very important in perspective drawings because we need nice and straight lines. Probably a marker or something to trace my lines and something to color with. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add that vanishing point somewhere in about the middle of my paper. And I'm going to actually draw a dot right there because now I need to add some lines that go to that point. I'm going to start at the corner on the bottom of my picture. I'm going to line up my ruler, and if I don't want my ruler to wiggle, I can make an L with my hand so my fingers are nice and wide and my hand is flat on the table, and I'll draw. Same on the other side, line it up with the corner and draw a line to that vanishing point. So it looks like I have a triangle on the bottom of my paper. Now I need to add these bars that end up dividing up the glass on our aquarium wall. I could go all the way up and make an X to the corners here, but that's not going to give us a lot of space for our arches along the tunnel there. So I'd say a little bit lower. And since I have a ruler, I could actually measure that out because we want these to be even. We don't want one that's really high up and one that's low down. It's going to ruin the illusion. So I want them about the same. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to connect here to my vanishing point. This is where things are starting to disappear to. All right, now we're going to work on the floor. We're going to continue with our lines to our vanishing point, and I divided mine up into tiles, so I'm going to draw 3 lines that go to that vanishing point. Now we're going to add some lines that are horizontal, that go side to side to continue with our tiles. Now the trick with these is things that are farther away, that are closer to the vanishing point, we want them to seem like they're disappearing, which means that as I go, my lines are going to start getting closer together so that they start looking smaller and smaller and smaller, like they're disappearing. So I'm going to start just by lining my ruler up with the bottom of my paper. Remember, it's a horizontal line. This line doesn't need to go to my vanishing point. It's just going to go straight across. And now I'm going to draw a second line, but I want it to be closer together than this line here. So I don't want to just line my ruler up again. That's going to be the same width. I want it to be a little bit skinnier. So I'm actually going to move this. And now I can see that the distance between these 2 lines is less than the distance between the edge of my paper and my first line. So they should get closer and closer together as they go to the vanishing point. I'm going to do that really quick. Now we're going to add these glass panels is kind of what it looks like on our tunnel. So same idea as what we just did for our tiles. I want to start just by lining this up here. Once again, it does not have to go to my vanishing point. It's just going to be a vertical line that goes up and down. But just like before, I don't want the same distance between the next line. I want it a little bit thinner because things need to get smaller as they go closer to the vanishing point, as they get further away. Now I need to do the same on the other side, but I do want my lines to be spaced about even on both of these sides, because as you can see, we are going to end up drawing arches or curves between them. So we want them spaced evenly. So I'm going to start just like before, and I'm going to hold my ruler, because I know I did that before. That's going to be the same. Now I'm going to kind of eyeball it. I notice that my next line comes to above, a little bit above this line here. So I can line up my ruler in about the same place and draw that line. And it should be spaced kind of the same as that other one. I can see this line comes to about here. So I'll line my ruler up and I'll draw that line there. Now we get to add those arches on there. Each of these is going to have a pair on each side that will draw the arch too. And I'm going to actually start in the middle, closer to the vanishing point, and we're going to work outwards. So I see this little guy right here has a partner here, so I'm going to draw just a curve to the next one. All right, next step, before I add any of my critters or details, I'm going to actually trace all of the lines that I've already done so I can see them before I add my details. I would recommend using your ruler to trace your straight lines so they don't get wiggly. I want to make sure they're nice and straight. Use that ruler just like you did on your pencil. Now that I've got my lines traced, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start adding my details. We are going to draw a guideline that's going to help us with our seaweed getting smaller as it gets closer to our vanishing point. A guideline isn't going to be in the final picture, it just helps us. So I'm going to erase it. That's part of the reason I had you trace your lines so you don't accidentally erase them when you erase out your guideline. The guideline goes to your vanishing point just like we did with the other lines. And that's going to help us make our seaweed get smaller as it goes. And I'm going to draw really lightly because remember, I'm going to erase this later. I don't want it to show up in the final picture. If I push down really hard, it's going to make it hard to erase. So see, you can barely see those lines. Now I'm going to decide how big I want my seaweed. Maybe I want to add other things like coral or rocks. I could do one type of seaweed. I added in some other different kinds that I kind of made up. It's up to you, but the one thing I have to remember is whatever I draw cannot go above this guideline. This guideline is helping me make things smaller when they get farther away. That's how 1 point perspective works. So if I draw my seaweed here, the tip of my seaweed doesn't go above my guideline. And as I keep working, I'll notice that whatever I'm adding is smaller. So if I kind of measure here with my fingers, look how much smaller that seaweed is than the one that's over here. Next, I get to start thinking about my sea critters. You can add whatever you want in your drawing. I added a turtle, some sharks, jellyfish, and anglerfish because they are my absolute favorite. But it's up to you what you want to add. The one thing you need to think about, just like what we did on our seaweed, is things that are closer to me, which would be, I'd be standing here if I was looking, are bigger. Things that are closer to my vanishing point are smaller. So I can look at the sharks or the jellyfish as an example. The shark is closer to me, closer to the edge of the paper, so it's bigger. This one's in real life would be about the same size as this shark, but look how much smaller he is. That's because he's further away, he's closer to the vanishing point, so he needs to be smaller. Fill up that space with whatever critters you want, and remember, Things that are closer to me are bigger. Things that are further away to my vanishing point where things disappear should be smaller. All right, I went in and I drew some of my critters in my drawing. I didn't end up liking how the Sharpie marker looked, so I got a thinner pen to trace my lines. But I always like tracing because I think it looks a lot better. If you traced your lines, one thing you need to remember before you add color is to erase out any pencil marks. We also have to erase out that guideline that we drew in when we were doing our seaweed. So I'm going to erase all of my pencil lines really quick. Once I've erased all of my pencil lines, I'm ready to add my color, which is the last step. One thing I want you to notice about the color I added on here is that as I get closer to my vanishing point, as I get further away and things start to look like they're disappearing, my color gets lighter. So look how much lighter this is here than the gray floor here. So closer to the edges, which are the spots that are closer to me, should be darker colors, which means I should use more pressure. I should push down harder when I color than on the inside. Color it in, have fun, and I can't wait to see what you create.